Welcome to our little show, where the wild ideas flow. We plant the seeds in dusty ground, watch them rise without a sound. Marketing dreams, tech extremes, AI's the spark behind the beams. Tales from the dirt road, where the whispers turn bold. Stories twist and stories grow. Where will our story go?
Top of the morning to you, Liz. How are you doing?
Good morning, Tony. I'm doing well. How are you?
I am great. I don't know if it's just the topic we're going to discuss today or maybe just the fall weather, but I feel like there's a lot of, I don't know, maple and syrup and crackling bacon in my future today.
Good comfort food. Yeah.
Good comfort food vibes. But with a little taste, maybe a little hint, if you will, of salt and sarcasm. Just a hint of that today, as we drill down on the Cracker Barrel, the recent Cracker Barrel faux pas with their logo, or was it a faux pas, which is something we will discuss today. So,
Love
are
it.
you ready? Are you strapped in? Are you ready to get your breakfast logo on?
I'm ready. And a lot of professional chefs, what do they say? Add more salt. Most dishes actually do need more salt. So this will be interesting.
The chefs and both the Romans and the chefs say add more salt, just some to food and some to the wound. So it just depends, I guess, on what we're doing here. But so let me ask you a question. I think I asked this last week and I honestly can't remember. I don't think you have never eaten, you have not partaken of the cuisine in your area of the Cracker Barrel. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
There are a handful of Cracker Barrel locations around Northeast Ohio, but no, I've never dined in.
Okay, well that's fine. It's totally fine. I couldn't remember. We had a conversation about that in Waffle House actually
Yes.
after our last, so I just couldn't remember. So, and then I'm going to make a daring assumption, and I'm going to do a little bit of a little mic drop here. You've probably never tasted New Coke or Coke 2, have you?
I'm not a big soda drinker
Okay.
in general. I like ginger ale.
Okay.
That's about it.
Okay.
No, I never did a taste test between
Coke or
Coke or
whatever.
New Coke. You could put a Coke and a Pepsi in front of me. I'd have no idea what the difference
Nothing.
is.
Okay. Okay. Well, here we go. Here's the thing. So, as you know, and I hope that our listeners know, we'll illustrate several things today. But as recent events, Cracker Barrel, which is a multi-billion-dollar, about a $36 billion conglomerate, if you will, restaurant
They're
conglomerate,
big.
huge, yeah, much larger than people think. I don't think that people realize, like, they're kind of a monster, or they're kind of a gorilla, you know. So they have recently decided to rebrand, or they had recently decided to rebrand, and I think they were in it for about between $500 and $700 million for everything. And I've heard a lot of things about, like, that's terrible. That's a lot of money to spend for a logo or a brand. That's not what they were doing. It was all
No.
about the signage and all of the other things that go with
Yeah.
it, which we can talk about deeper. But one of the reasons why they did that was because they were seeing decreased market share, as much as I believe 16% of their market share had declined in the recent levels back compared to 2019. So basically, in the last 5 years or so, they had seen a decrease of 16%, which is interesting because that mimics some other product that we'll soon discuss. But they went through this process, and I'm just going to set it up a little bit. They went through kind of the normal, like, branding process. However, it's very interesting for kind of a marketing design professional. The process generally, and please pipe in, I don't want to do all of the talking, but the brands that I have been developing or on teams to develop is basically look at, the current brand, we look at who your audience is, and this is very fast. We do some research, we look at other competitors or, marketplaces that are either in your industry or outside your industry, inside your geographical area, outside, so on and so forth, getting an idea, basically trying to get above the trees and try to see the landscape, if you will. And then there is if it's done well, which is why I kick the 99 cent, 500 logos for 99 cents philosophy. But if it's done well, that trademark, the evolution of that brand and the brand mission and the logo and all of that reflects the company's direction for the future. And theoretically, you're going to do a substantial amount of market research because you're going to end up having, as we discussed, a fairly large investment, $500 to $700 million, to basically turn and burn this new brand. Is it that accurate in your experience as well?
Yes, I agree. I think maybe the only thing that I would add, and this is kind of applicable to what we're seeing with Cracker Barrel, is stepping back and because I see this with my clients, we've done a brand or a great website, and then you look at it a couple years and you're like, oh my God, this just looks so jaded now. And there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but you're like, wow, this just needs a little refresh to look a little more current because design trends change. And when we get to that point with a lot of clients, we're not throwing everything out. We're just like, hey, let's evolve this a little bit.
Yeah, which is excellent point. I mean, I think, oh boy, scratch that down, because that's something else we need to talk about, is basically the long-term evolution of a brand in itself. So with that pivot, basically what we should have been looking at is a guerrilla, lack of a better term, a cuisine professional organization business that is losing market share for multiple reasons, has decided to rebrand, probably did some sort of due diligence, and then was going to bring out a new brand, right?
Yes.
What happened, as you all may know, I'm sure everyone caught the meme. I don't know. Some people, I think, printed T-shirts, candidly, was that the brand was introduced. Literally 7 days later, there was a mea culpa on behalf of the corporation. They went back to the other brand and basically said, we're really sorry, blah, blah, blah. During that time, the company had another slip. But once they basically a week later, plus or minus a week later, decided that they were coming back, guess what? Everything went up. Their stocks went up. We've been talking about Cracker Barrel. Good God. It's 14, 20 days later, and we're still talking about
it.
Right. And it's still running in people's feeds. I mean, people, you scroll through, and I mean, how Meta and algorithms work. Like, it's tumbling through feeds today, right? So I don't know. So without giving all of the grapes. So it doesn't surprise me whether you are a ginger ale fan or not, which, by the way, is highly indicative in your part of the woods. I have just seen an entire story on Seagram's and how it's ginger ale on cocaine, but we can talk about that later. But anyway, ginger ale, not a big thing here. But back in the 80s, 1980, just to refresh folks, there was another giant brand based in the Atlanta, Georgia area, and they were seeing a slip in their market share as well. Ironically enough, they were seeing a 24% slip, which is very interesting. It's very close to what Cracker Barrel was seeing, right? And their battle was something effective, and this is 1985. So for you that want to wake up like me and decide we want to talk about the 80s again, this is the podcast for you. So in 85, Coca-Cola decided, we need to have something different, jazzier, a little sugarier, a little sweeter. They wanted to compete against Pepsi. They wanted to compete against RC Cola, Royal Cola. There were a lot of different competitors in the market that weren't there before. So they unveiled New Coke. Now, for those of you listening that are old enough to understand New Coke or have tasted New Coke, New Coke was basically a super sugary, sweet Pepsi knockoff of Coca-Cola. It was highly polarizing, very polarizing at the time. Now, this is before you had social media. This is basically, you had radio, television, billboards. I don't know. I mean, that's basically it, right? So Coca-Cola, the company, after 79 days, decided, you know what? We've heard from you. We understand that you like the original recipe. We're going to bring Coke back, but we're going to call it Coca-Cola Classic. Now, when they did that, same thing. They had a spike of 36%. They regained the #1 soft drink in America, which they had lost to Pepsi. And they then continued on 2 brands, which they called Coca-Cola Classic, as I mentioned, New Coke, which shifted to Coke 2, Coke Roman numeral 2. And I'll tell you, this was surprising in doing some of this research. Coke 2 lived until 2007.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So what we thought was like, it's out. It was alive someplace. I mean, I didn't see it, but I mean, I wasn't looking for Coke 2 because Coke 2 sucked. But all of that being said, the difference are twofold for me. One is that Coca-Cola was not in the social media meta environment, right? So I would argue that being in this time frame of technology and or information transfer, it's much faster than it was in 1985. For God's sakes, I was like 13 in 12 in 1985, right? So, but you're still getting a very similar result, which is whether it takes 7 days or 79 days, you had a poor reaction. The company changed it and it came back. Now, I feel like we should cue the dramatic music here, Liz. I may do that in editing. And this is what centers around my whole op-ed for next week. But here's the thing. This podcast was really going to talk about the value of a brand, which I think is still viable, right?
So important. Yep.
Yeah, because I mean, brands, without getting too deep into it, especially the guy from Oklahoma, brands are just that. Brands basically come from when Caballeros, or even prior to that in Europe, they wanted to mark their livestock, right? And they wanted to make sure that no one else knew, take our livestock or whatever, and everyone knew whose that was. So you would literally, heat up iron and on, animals. Sorry, PETA. It's just history. I didn't do it. So I've never branded anything alive. So just FYI. But that being said, that's where brand developed. And of course, when you saw someone's livestock that had that brand, you knew that was like, Yellowstone. Let's just use something famous and fictional. So that was the Yellowstone brand, or that was the lazy, 4-6's branch brand, or blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
That's the same thing. So that's the value of that. So although that's what the original premise of this podcast is, nay, it's not. Because Tony Vann said, in my little twisted mind, I think there's a conspiracy here. Now, it's not a big conspiracy. I don't think it's huge. But I would throw out that in hindsight, and I think it was I couldn't find the exact research because it was more of like a paradigm shift. It wasn't like, oh, this is when it happened. But around, I'm going to say about 10 years, like 1991, 92, people started going, hey, you remember that stuff that happened with Coke and how they were like losing market share? I mean, they had lost since World War II, which was their highest point, 1942, I think. So, okay. They had lost 60% of their share. I mean, that's terrible.
That's a lot.
Yeah. It's bad. No, excuse me, I'm wrong. They had 60% and it had plummeted to under 24%. I'm sorry. So it was even worse than that. So it was like, they had more than half of the entire market in one drink, basically.
Yeah.
And it plummeted. So, the kind of look back is like, wow, was that really real? Or was this just a kind of a marketing ploy to like re-engage us? And I would say, and dare I say this today, but I think that we see that all the time in a little less dramatic fashion. But The McRib sandwich, I think, is a very famous. It's a limited time. It's not a sandwich. It's only a promo. Or famously, about 6 years ago, Taco Bell. I don't know if you're familiar with this or not. Obviously, I eat way too much fast food and soda, but Taco Bell took away the Mexican pizza. I'm not even sure you knew that Taco Bell had a Mexican pizza, Liz, but they took it away, and there was a cry. There was an outcry. Ah! A year later, guess what? Guess what they brought back, Liz? They brought back the Mexican pizza, and now it's one of their best sellers, right? This Crunchwrap Supreme that has just come back, or the chicken Crunchwrap that's at McDonald's. I think that this happened. So anyway, all that being said, I would pose to you that the CEO of Cracker Barrel, who I'm scanning for the name right now, I cannot remember her name at all. I'm so sorry. But I think that there may have been, what do they say? Dumb like a fox or tricky like a fox. I can't think, smart like a fox, where it's like they put out, think about that logo. If you had done full research on that bad boy, right? If you had said, what do you think about Cracker Barrel? First of all, like, you have not been in a Cracker Barrel, and God bless Cracker Barrel, but it's as close to a cafeteria as God's waiting room as any place else in the world, right? I mean, you walk in and you're like, it's like human bowling with walkers in there. Bink, bink, bink. Like, you're trying to like navigate around, trying to get into where you want to go. Two is, the food is fine. We mentioned it's a little salty, but it's salty because I think the patrons enjoy the fact because their taste buds have melted away, and all they really respond to at this point is sweet and salty food that, oh, by the way, has the texture of very, very fine pudding, right? So, I mean, I'm not, this isn't a Cracker Barrel slam. I eat a Cracker Barrel. That's fine. I'm down with the hash brown potato casserole, but do I need to put my hash brown potatoes in a casserole? That should tell you something. So what I'm saying here is, Liz, I think that they were trying to figure out a way to like zhuzh or refire their brand because they saw the 16% loss. And who's talking about, Liz? My grandma's not on Face page. My grandma's not on the TikTok. She's not making rolls or reels. We are. People like me. And I'm old. And I guarantee that people like you in your 30-somethings, 40-somethings, whatever it is, you're talking about it. Your people are talking about it. When was the last time your people were ever? It's not, you established it yourself. Cracker Barrel ain't even in your area. You got to drive like 30 minutes. Did you talk about Cracker Barrel, Liz?
We did.
Yeah. Right. So, genius. First of all, golf clap. You probably can't see this, but I want. Kudos to Cracker Barrel for looking back in time and understanding what a powerful move, wink, 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 New Coke was back in the 80s. I mean, for God's sakes, everything in the 80s is cool again. Why not rip off their marketing strategy, for God's sakes, right?
Yeah.
Cracker Barrel did it. Congratulations, Cracker Barrel. That's what I've got to say. So, that's been a rant. Please jump in here with questions, comments, or concerns.
Loving this rant. You're absolutely right. I have spent more time in the last, 15, 20 some days thinking or reading about Cracker Barrel than I have in my entire life. We went to an improv show that Friday night, a couple days after everything blew up, and oh my God, like, of course that was weaved in a couple points, and everyone was just dying of laughter. I mean, yeah, when you proposed this topic, I was kind of like, this is an interesting theory. And I'm glad that you did some research and dug a little deeper. And I think for me, what was like, oh yeah, you're right, was it would absolutely do some focus group testing and get feedback. And so if there was any concern that this wasn't the right direction, they would have known that. They would have course corrected before all of this was rolled out. If they wanted to proceed anyways, I think that's pretty telling as to what may have been going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, I see. That's like the whole thing is, and I've said this forever, and I don't want to sound, I mean, I'm going to come off as the conspiracy theorist for sure on this deal. But here's the thing, like, as doing public relations, marketing, whatever, you always tell your friends, like, nothing you see is real. And it's not like it's like fake news or blah, 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 but it's placement. There is so much time done. It's I mean, everything I say is negative, but it's like a puppet show, right? Like, you have to build the box and you have to, script everything out, and then all the audience sees is basically the top 1/3 of your hand inside the sock, right? That's what it is anytime. I mean, even if you have a
Yeah.
legitimate news story, you're going to pitch the reporter, you're going to talk to your client about the top 3 things you're going to try to get over, and then you go do it. Same thing with a brand. A brand is much more orchestrated or scripted. Um, and to your point, and this dawned on me when you were talking about the improv. This to me is like live product placement in our lives. It's the same thing that people in movies and TV shows have been doing for years, which is, hey,
Yeah.
so and so and so and so is having breakfast at the table, and they put, the syrup on the table and it's showcased or whatever. They're doing that, but in our lives. Like, they have just planted that product in the back of our heads, closer to the hippocampus than the cerebellum, but it's there, guys. It
Yeah.
is all there.
Yeah, and we live in this space, so we see it. Like, there are moments where I just, if I'm scrolling on, whatever social media, sometimes I'm like, "Oh my God, this is ridiculous." Like, I have to put the phone down, walk away, because I can see how fake it is, but most people can't.
Yeah.
Most people are not in our world.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing, I mean, it's 100%. If you're used to navigating or seeing that, and I don't want to go too deep, but I mean, if you're ever on Reddit, that is a spinny place to live for sure. But you want to get some reading done. But yeah, I mean, I think that 2 things, and I don't want to say like I've solved the entire world's problems here. I've definitely not, but I think they're twofold. One is it's the expertise. Let's bring it back to kind of what the tales for the dirt from the dirt road is, which is the expertise that people in our realm have, which candidly, some people still don't understand the importance of that IP that we bring to the table.
Right.
Is the experience, is the tactical and strategical experience. And then when you get to my age, and dare I say, you are approaching in the next 10 or 15 years, you start getting a longer gaze at things. And so, yes, 1980, I was trying to find the exact date, and honestly, I couldn't. I think
It
it was
was
like,
80, I think it was 85. I pulled it
yeah,
up.
it's like late night 85 or so. But anyway, probably, I'd probably turned 14, right? And so don't take this wrong. Maybe I was a little bit more of a geek than other 14-year-olds, but think about it. I mean, I'm pulling from some 40 years of life experience to be like,
Yeah.
hey, in King Supers in Denver, Colorado, this shit happened. And hey, on Facebook and my Insta roll, this is happening. Let's push those two together. But this isn't a Tony Van situation. This is why you have people doing the things that they do. This is the difference between a surgeon that goes in 5 years after residency and does a good job, and someone that's been an orthopedic surgeon for 30 years and they're like, that didn't sound right. Let's go ahead and do blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's kind of the
Yeah.
difference. So, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, as the
Yeah.
kids say, I am HO. So,
No, you're absolutely right. I've been thinking about that a lot in the world of AI that we're living in, and I was like, I've been thinking about the things that the mistakes that I made that I had to learn in the real world, and I'm like, how's AI gonna know to tell somebody to watch out for that if they didn't do? These are the random thoughts I have when I'm driving.
no, yet another podcast. No, so we'll dig, we'll
Yeah,
dig. I mean, I just saw a thing that Spike Lee was talking about, almost the same thing about how the AI can't make the mistakes to learn the things that we do.
right.
So anyway, so it's very good.
Yeah.
Well,
I also, can I just say,
yeah,
I was born in 1985. So
Yes, that's the era right there.
yes.
Woo!
So this is really fascinating to me because we are so deep in the digital age now. Like I'm like, how did communications professionals and PR professionals, like how did they do their listening when there was no social? Like we have the luxury of just opening up an app or a web browser and we can see all the comments, we can see it all. We know what the sentiment is pretty darn quickly. So that's, yeah, that's
Yeah.
fascinating to me.
We didn't, I mean, I think, thank you for bringing that back because that's another, I can wax poetic about the 80s. Two things about this, though. I think that's the reason why, and it's almost a marked difference that it took 10 times longer
Yep.
for Coke to pivot. And I'm not sure once again, these are all somewhat speculations. I don't know anyone at Coke. I don't know. But
Yeah.
my guess is that they basically, if it were me and sitting in the boardroom in 1983 and a half, trying to figure out how they're going to roll this thing out, I would have said, okay, well, you know, folks, we're going to have to push it out. And then we're just going to have to figure out what's going on. And we're going to have to turn on our recorders on the VCRs or probably Betamax at that time. And we're going to pull all that stuff. And then we're going to sit down and we're going to watch the Betamax. And it's going to take us, I have no clue, but apparently it takes 80 days for us to kind of hear that echo back.
Sure.
Whereas, excuse me, with Cracker Barrel, you're 7 days in and it's like, that happened on a Monday and that was the worst week of your friggin' life kind of thing.
Yep.
There was something else I was going to say about that, and I can't remember what it was. Honestly, you brought something up about the so the other part of this, which might blow your mind and might not. So when so I started kind of in 1994 ish. My first legit job was 1995 at 94. So my whole point is that that's 10 years after you were born, basically. So you would have been 10.
Yeah.
So at 10 years old, my first press release was I mailed the press release. Like
Wow.
I like folded the press release up and I put it in an envelope and I said embargo and I sent it off. And you're kind of like, okay, well, that's going to happen. Embargo is 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
mail will take between 2 and 4 days to get there. Like if you blew it, like if you embargoed it and you got it there 2 days later, the other outlets are going to be pissed off because
Right.
they got it in the mail and it had nothing to do with you. So it was like fax and then mail. No, excuse me, mail and then fax. And then when I worked at the Capitol, we hand delivered that shit because it was much
Sure.
faster, right? Because then we had our own pool.
Yep.
And then you kind of went. So yeah, so it's yeah. I go ahead.
And I never physically mailed a press release in my life. Like by the time I graduated and was working in the field, like no, never did that.
Thank God. Thank God. I mean, good for you. Well, and let's say that, like, there was a lot of, like, once again, like, I'm obviously waxing a little bit here, but I can't wait to learn what your story is. Like, what's the next chapter? Because I think that AI is great and everything's great. Social media is great. I mean, I'm not an anti-techer, but I think you'll look back and say, I remember when I just sent an email or I just remember blah, blah. It'll be
Oh yeah,
totally different, So, and
absolutely. Yeah, like what is totally normal to me right now that I'll be talking about or reflecting on in 20 years. Like, oh my God, I can't believe we used to do that. Well,
right.
that's how we did it back in 2015.
Yeah, I remember being absolutely offended when a reporter went out on Facebook and asked for someone to tell them about a story. Like I was like, well, why do we have a day book? I don't understand. We're supposed to have a morning meeting and they should be discussing how important my stuff is. No, some reporter who's very ambitious that understood the system basically said, you know what, I can cut those brokers out,
Yep.
which basically made all of us shift over to social media and start
Sure.
looking for the help a reporter out and all of those kind of things. So
Yeah.
anyway, we're getting way off topic.
But yeah, back to branding. Here was a question that popped into my mind.
Yes.
Is one of the other big rebrands that I remember was when Gap did their rebranding. And I only remember bits and pieces of it because I think that was when I was maybe in high school, maybe. So I'm
Okay.
just curious, did that feel conspiracy like to you, or was that just like, no, we were literally trying to rebrand and it flopped?
I barely remember that. I just had to Google it or just take a look at it to remember. I don't remember that being. It's interesting because that also was a 6-day window. I just saw that too. So
Pretty short.
it's
Yeah.
very short. And I'll have to. So Liz, you've caught me off guard, but I'm glad you did. I need to do some research. There's these things in my head because Gap is a giant conglomeration of like
Yes.
I think Gap owns Old Navy and some other
Old Navy,
stores.
Banana Republic, and there's
Is it
one
American Eagle? Do they own?
Lita, or I never know how to say
Okay. Okay.
it's there's a couple brands within that family. Yeah.
See, and now that crashes the theory, but you said when did that happen? Did you say in the early? I'm
Was
looking.
it like early 2000? Here, I'm Googling as
Mhm,
well.
mhm. Nothing like show prep on the run.
Yep.
2008, in
Oh,
2010, following slump
little
sales.
little later than I thought, actually.
So they were still within the what I would call the social media era, if I was to be a Taylor Swift fan. And they have coined it Gap Gate, which is interesting to me. Um, but unfortunate backfiring its logo redesigned, highlight, blah blah blah. Yeah, we'll have to look at this because I'm going to go back to the same thing. Like it's the same principles. Like what Gap is a huge company. Why did they um, do this? It says it looks like a solid reputation of field rebranding, communication, fashion. It estimated to have a cost of about $100 million for
Whew.
that. So, and then they basically swapped it. So it was cost $100 million to rebrand the entire thing, quote unquote, overnight. So yeah, less than a week on October 12th, 2020, the same spokesperson. Yeah, I don't know. It's really something to think about. I mean,
Yeah.
what's funny about this, and I don't say what's interesting about this is we can pull these, and Gap may be. I mean, like I'm like, oh my god, like I now need to dig deep
You
and
want to do another deep
yeah,
dive on this
deep
one? Yeah.
dive in denim for me, right? Like this is happening. But here's the deal: like you start connecting these points, and you think to yourself, oh, it's A to B to B to C, C to D, blah blah blah. It's more like when you're at summer camp and you're out in the woods and someone says, oh, there's the constellation Orion, and you're like, I mean, I see the North Star and I see the belt, but I don't see like the arrow, and like, and it takes time for you to kind of gaze into the solar system to start seeing those connections to understand like,
Yeah.
oh, maybe that is. Of course, nowadays, kids these days, they've got like 27 satellites, and the North Star isn't the brightest light anymore. It's the International Space Station. So, maybe that's analogous for the clutter on social media. I don't know what that looks like, but yeah. So
We've got space clutter, we've got digital clutter, physical clutter. I mean, it's just a very
closet
crazy world.
clutter, right? During Christmas time, you get, oh, what a clutter, a clatter. So I don't know. Maybe listen. Well, on that note of a gift for the fall, Liz, I can't. I mean, you know, there's time in which you're very patient with me, and then there's time in which I'm pretty sure you want to just wrap some sort of like white armless sweater around me and send me off. But either way, Liz, I really appreciate you letting me get this out, and I'm not trying to drop this. I do hope to have a little bit of a written piece out next week, so check our social media for that. And yeah, so
Definitely.
did you
Yeah.
did you enjoy the path, whether it's true or not?
I enjoyed this journey. I enjoyed this look back. Very insightful, and my wheels are turning. Will I ever implement anything like this for one of our own clients? Probably not, but it's always an interesting story or an interesting anecdote to have in your back pocket. So I love it.
Lessons learned, and I'll tell you, you taught me a little bit something, and now I have a little gap in my research to check out. So, all right, with that laugh, I'm going to wrap this bad boy up. So for the Tales from the Dirt Road, I'm Tony Van,
And I'm Liz Hirsch.
and we'll see you next week.
See you later.
From gravel paths to starlit skies, we chase the sparks with open eyes. The future hums in the air tonight. Every step feels like first light. Where will our story go? Will it bend like a willow or roar like a stream? Will it build a new world, just a dream? From gravel paths to starlit skies.